Angel scale life science exits are about being acquired early, not growing big. So tell me more about why that is and what you found in the data that supports that.
For me, it was really helpful to take a look at what could happen. And so if you look at what could happen, that helps to illustrate the importance of the criteria that are in place. If you take like I've worked in oncology, you take an oncology therapeutic company, okay, from the point where they would apply, it's going to be a preclinical asset. They need to wrap up their preclinical, they need to get into humans, they need to go through generally 3 phases of clinical trial development. You could be talking 15, 20 years. And then if it is going to be ultimately successful and launch commercially, you're probably going to be bringing in, at least $500 million, if not more, to be able to fund all of this clinical development, to account for any sort of hiccups or mistakes in your clin dev plan, if you want to actually scale up the company. So I think of it as the more time and the more individual nodes that could fail, that increases your risk. The time obviously impacts your rate of return, that you'd rather get your payoff in 1 year than 10 years. But then also the likelihood that you'll hit a situation where, whether it be the company or whether it be the macro environment, you're going to need to raise in a form where it's going to disadvantage your early investors. The more time, the more money, the more risk that you're going to hit one of those rounds where the new investors are going to squeeze the old investors. And so, even in the set, the companies that exited, we saw a lot of the exits in that ballpark of 7 years. And that includes mergers. So they didn't actually hit the commercialization stage potentially, and they were acquired by another company. It's still a long time frame. And so I think of it as the companies that don't have their eye on the ball in terms of what is your exit going to be? What specifically are we strategically putting in place to be able to achieve that exit? Whether it be running the right trials, producing the right evidence. For a lot of the med device or the diagnostics companies, they probably need to have some commercial traction before that acquisition. And so what would that look like? It's having a hypothesis on that path. And then as the investors, we're able to pressure test that. Other alternatives are companies that have like 3 to 5 different programs that they want to run. They're trying to raise $5 million, but they want to run 5 different trials. Sometimes there's an inconsistency in what they're asking for and what they're going to need. Some of the companies that angel groups would decline in a reasonable basis, they might be great venture investments, but they're going to need $750 million before they hit their exit. It's just for an angel group, what we're investing on the front end, the time consideration, and then the likelihood of dilution in one of the later rounds. These are some of the considerations in terms of why those are our working hypothesis.
A quick note before we continue the conversation. Alongside the Diligent Observer podcast and newsletter, I also run an outsourced operations service specifically built to serve angel networks. My team handles things like initial screening, social media, newsletter prep, platform management, and a whole lot more. The kinds of things that either aren't getting done or shouldn't be done by busy community leaders. If that sounds interesting to you, send me a note. Now, back to it. So it sounds like some of the key questions you ask more in the founder diligence. This comes back, Yaniv, to what you mentioned about really focusing on the team and understanding, can they take this to market? Maybe center around, what is your exit strategy? Right? That is a common question in angel investing, but particularly important here because if you hear them say something like, "Oh, we're going to IPO in 4 years," you go, "Okay, thanks for your time." Is that, am I tracking?
Yeah. So to add to Alex's point, even before I answer yours, there is a very specific purple unicorn that we're looking for. It is traditionally a money and data intensive industry and an area where companies require a lot of that to exit. But there are specific situations where you can exit earlier and with less amount of money, which would allow people who write check sizes such as ours to actually be successful. So we're not saying this is not a great company or this is a good company. What we're saying is this an opportunity for us to make money in, right? Given the amount of money we can put in, given how much money will be required in the future, potential dilution from the future, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to figure out. And as things take longer and longer, uncertainty builds as well. I mean, you don't know, you can sort of see what's in the clinicaltrials.gov pipeline right now. Basically, you can track every company that currently has a clinical trial open. But what's going to happen in 7 years or 10 years or 15 years, very difficult to tell what other technologies are going to go after. So time adds a huge amount of uncertainty that we don't have the money to deal with in that sense. And so we try to look at opportunities where a company can generate enough data in an area that is of interest enough to the pharmas. And this is where the background and our day jobs of our members comes in, is critical, because our members see and have these discussions in their day jobs all the time, so they can bring that perspective and we can understand what, hey, if this is really good and they have the right data, they'll exit with this size of trial in this amount of time, because all they need to show is X and somebody who's going to come in and buy them. So apologies, but I wanted to discuss that. So
yeah, the question is just, how does this shape your screening, right? Because you're specifically looking for these types of outcomes. So I imagine a lot of this comes down to the founder's vision and strategy, and how are they currently, right? Because you're engaging in them at this present moment. How are they currently envisioning the future of the business? And so what's your exit strategy has perhaps extra nuance here than it might in some other industry.
We go to a lot of conferences, and now since the pandemic, we can be all over the world through Zoom and meet many companies, and we get tens and hundreds of, when we go to Bio, we get 300, 400 invitations to meet with companies. And almost always one of our first questions to the company that's trying to engage with us is, how much money do you think you're going to need to reach an exit? That's almost always the first question, and the response tells you a lot about how much the founder has thought about that path. And because for us, it's a way to figure out, is this appropriate for us or not? So we only meet with them if we find out that it's more than $30 million or so. We tell them, we think you're probably more of a VC opportunity than an angel investment opportunity, and you might want to start that route now, as opposed to wasting your time with us, because we want to make sure that they don't they only spend their time applying to us if it makes sense for them. There's a chance for them to do that. We ask those questions in our application. It's one of the first things that we screen for. It's at the top of our application, so it's the first thing that we screen for when we talk about a company. So it's a very quick discussion if we see that somebody has gone over those numbers. And in the preamble in our applications, we say these are the things that we prefer, these are the things we generally look for, and the amount of money to reach an exit is there. It's right up there. So because we don't want to waste people's time filling out an application for us with very specific information if it's not the right fit. Again, we're not trying to figure out what companies are good or bad. We're just trying to figure out if there's a fit and whether we can make money in that opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Diligent Observer. I'm your host, Andrew, and if you're an angel investor looking for essential angel intel in 5 minutes every week, I think you'd enjoy my newsletter. I send my best stuff, interesting deals, and more straight to your inbox so you never miss a thing. Subscribe today at thediligentobserver.com.